It's a normal moment. Not dramatic, not tragic, just familiar. You're standing in the kitchen while something warms up, coffee, leftovers, the day. The light is doing that quiet thing it does in the morning, and your phone is already in your hand, like it belongs there. You scroll without thinking. A clip of someone announcing a new business, a post about someone's first 6 figures, a before and after photo that makes success look like a straight line. You don't feel jealous exactly. It's more like a thin pressure behind the ribs, like a reminder you didn't ask for. And then you would do what you always do. You close the app, or you open another one, or you tell yourself you'll come back to it later. Later meaning when you have more time, more energy, more clarity, more confidence. Later meaning when you've somehow become the kind of person who doesn't hesitate. Maybe you glance at your calendar. Maybe you check your bank account. Maybe you stare at a note you wrote weeks ago. An idea, a plan, a goal you meant to take seriously. It's still there. The words haven't used. You haven't deleted it. You haven't done it either. And in that moment, everything is calm on the outside. You look fine, you feel fine. The day keeps moving. You even tell yourself something reasonable, something responsible. Not today, not yet, but soon. When things slow down, when you're ready. And the weird part is, it doesn't feel like giving up. It feels like being smart. That's how it starts. Ordinary, harmless, almost invisible. And then the thought shows up, the one you don't say out loud. Not to your friends, not to your partner, not even fully to yourself. It slips in between tasks, between scrolling and silence, between one more delay and the next. What if I'm late? Not late like a clock. Late like a person who missed the window. Late like someone whose time already passed while they were being patient, practical, cautious. Late like someone who's watching the world hand out results to other people and trying to act like it doesn't mean anything. You don't say, "I'm not good enough." That would be too obvious. You say something more subtle, more believable. You say, "I'm still figuring it out." Or, "I just need to get my life together first." Or, "I need a better plan." Or, "I don't want to waste time on the wrong thing." And those sound wise. They sound mature. They sound like someone who's thinking long term. But under those words is the quieter one. What if I start and I prove what I've been afraid to know? Because being a late bloomer isn't really about the calendar. It's about the fear that timing is talent. That the fact you haven't done it yet means you can't. That if it was meant for you, you would have arrived already. So you hesitate. You wait for the feeling to match the decision. You wait for confidence to show up first, like an invitation. And every day you wait, you tell yourself you're just being careful, when really you're trying to avoid the moment where you find out what happens when you actually try. That's the thought you don't say out loud, because if you say it, it becomes real. And once it's real, you can't unknow it. Over time, the moment doesn't stay a moment. It becomes a rhythm. At first, it's understandable. Life is full. You're tired. You're handling responsibilities. You're doing what needs to be done. You tell yourself you're in a season where your big thing has to wait. And that's not even a lie. It's just incomplete. Because then it happens again. Another day where you don't start. Another week where you don't follow through. Another month where you keep the idea alive in your head because it feels safer there. You still think about it, which makes you feel like you're not abandoning it. You still research it, still watch videos, still collect information. You still imagine what it would look like if you finally committed. And that's how it becomes normal, because nothing breaks, nothing collapses. You still wake up, you still go to work, you still pay bills, you still make it through the week. The cost doesn't show up as a crisis. It shows up as a quiet routine. Thinking, planning, delaying, repeating. And time passes without announcing itself. It's not like you wake up one morning and realize you've been waiting for 2 years. It's more like you wake up and realize the same idea you had back then is still sitting in the same place. Only now it feels heavier, because now it's carrying the weight of how long you've avoided it. You start using phrases like "one day" more often. You start saying things like, "I've been meaning to." You start collecting unfinished beginnings like souvenirs. And the strangest part is that the longer it goes on, the more normal it feels. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because humans adapt. We normalize what we repeat. Eventually, waiting stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like who you are. There's a part of the story most people skip because it's not dramatic enough to scare you, but it's honest enough to haunt you. It's the future where nothing terrible happens, but nothing meaningful happens either. You still have your life. You still have your routines. You still have your personality, your humor, your people, your little comforts. You still function. You still survive. But the version of you who was supposed to grow quietly doesn't. And it doesn't happen with a crash. It happens with absence. The conversation you never start. The skill you never build. The project you never finish. The risk you never take. The person you never become, not because you failed, but because you never entered the arena long enough to learn. That's the missing chapter. The slow fade of possibility. It looks like telling yourself you're too busy until the season changes and you find a new reason. It looks like watching other people live out the kind of courage you keep respecting from a distance. It looks like realizing that the only thing you're consistently practicing is postponement. And eventually, it shows up in tiny, almost embarrassing moments. You hear someone your age talk about how they started late, and now they're 5 years into something you still only think about. You catch yourself saying, "I wish I would have started back then." And the sentence sits in your mouth like dry bread because you know back then was a day you were alive. A day you could have chosen differently. You don't lose your life. You lose momentum. You lose self-belief in slow motion. You lose that feeling of being in motion towards something you respect. And what fades isn't your dream in some cinematic way. What fades is your relationship with yourself. Because every time you delay, a part of you notices. It doesn't scream, it just remembers. Here's the misunderstanding that keeps late bloomers stuck. They think the problem is timing. They think the problem is age, or opportunity, or lack of direction, or not knowing the right path yet. They think success is a train with a schedule and they missed it. They think if they had had better support earlier, better clarity earlier, more confidence earlier, they would already be on the other side of this. And because that feels logical, they keep waiting for the perfect alignment. But timing isn't talent. And age isn't the real gatekeeper people pretend it is. The real misunderstanding is believing that if you were meant to do it, it would feel natural by now. That if you had what it takes, you would have started sooner. That your hesitation is proof of incapacity instead of what it actually is, proof you care, and proof you're human, and proof you're afraid of being seen as a beginner. People call themselves late bloomers like it's a diagnosis, like it's written in stone, like the story is already decided. But what's actually happening is simpler and more uncomfortable. You've been measuring your worth by your timeline. You've been treating the clock like a judge. You've been confusing delay with destiny. And once you believe that, you interpret everything through it. If it's hard, you assume it's not for you. If it's slow, you assume you're behind. If you don't feel confident, you assume you're not ready. If someone else is ahead, you assume you're too late. That's perception. Reality is different. Reality is that most people you admire didn't start because they felt ready. They started because they got tired of being the person who only thought about starting. That's the pivot. Your issue isn't that you're late. Your issue is that you've turned waiting into an identity. Because this story isn't really about productivity. It's not even really about ambition. It's about self-trust. Late bloomers don't suffer because they're behind. They suffer because they don't feel reliable to themselves anymore. They don't believe their own promises. They don't trust their own "I'm going to." They've said soon so many times that it stopped sounding like hope and started sounding like avoidance. And when you don't trust yourself, everything becomes heavier. Every new goal feels like a scam you're trying to sell yourself. Every plan feels like another thing you're going to disappoint yourself with. So you stay in the safe zone, thinking, consuming, imagining, because those don't require you to face your own follow-through. This is why late bloomers often look calm while feeling restless. Because the tension isn't in what they do, it's in who they believe themselves to be. A person who starts strong and fades. A person who needs more time. A person who has potential but never turns it into proof. A person who is always about to. And after a while, that self-image becomes familiar. Familiar becomes comfortable. Comfortable becomes dangerous. Not because it ruins your life overnight, but because it quietly teaches you that your actions don't match your intentions, and you begin to live as if that's normal. Self-trust doesn't vanish all at once. It erodes. And the moment you stop trusting yourself, you start outsourcing your future to luck, to timing, to circumstances, anything except your own agency. That's what this story is really about. Not blooming late, but wondering if you're someone who will ever bloom at all. The small decision that changes the ending isn't some grand reinvention. It isn't a sudden surge of motivation. It isn't a checklist, a routine, a 5 a.m. miracle plan. It's quieter than that. It's deciding that you're done negotiating with your own life, that you don't need to feel ready before you begin, that you don't need a perfect plan to earn the right to move, that you don't need certainty to take yourself seriously. You just need to stop treating your future like it's optional. The shift is internal. You stop asking, "Am I too late?" And you start asking, "Am I willing to be in motion even as a beginner?" Because that's what late blooming requires: beginner, energy, humility, repetition, a willingness to look unpolished while you become real. And yes, that's uncomfortable. It might even feel humiliating at first, but it's also the only way the story changes. You become the person who does what they said they would do, imperfectly, slowly, consistently. Maybe the first step is embarrassingly small. You write the first paragraph. You record the first draft. You apply for the thing you told yourself you weren't qualified for. You sign up for the class. You stop consuming someone else's success as entertainment and start building your own as evidence. And if you need another example, think about how small the original delay was. It started as "not today," so the reversal can start as today, just this much. Not as a promise to transform your entire life, just as a refusal to keep living in the same loop. A refusal to keep letting your future exist only as a thought experiment. Because the most powerful thing you can do as a late bloomer isn't to catch up. It's to become trustworthy to yourself again. And that happens the moment you choose movement over waiting. So now we're back in the same ordinary moment, the same kind of morning, the same phone in your hand, the same quiet pressure behind your ribs, the same familiar thought trying to convince you to delay again, because delaying feels safe and starting feels like exposure. But the story doesn't end here. It doesn't resolve neatly. It's not supposed to. Because your life isn't a motivational clip. It's a real arc. And real arcs don't close with certainty. They open with choice. Here's what changes when you hear yourself clearly. You realize you've been treating later like a neutral decision when it's actually a vote. Every delay is a vote for the person you've been. Every small act of follow-through is a vote for the person you say you want to become. And that's the nerve of it. You don't become a different person through one big moment. You become a different person through the quiet pattern you repeat when nobody's watching. So if you've been calling yourself a late bloomer, listen closely to what that label has been protecting you from. Sometimes late bloomer isn't humility. Sometimes it's a softer way of saying, "I'm scared to start and confirm my fears." Sometimes it's a way to keep the dream intact by never testing it. But you don't need to protect the dream anymore. Dreams don't need protection. They need proof. They need a version of you that stops romanticizing potential and starts respecting action, especially the kind of action that looks unimpressive at first. And maybe the hardest truth is this: no one is coming to announce that it's your time. No one is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Okay, you're officially ready now, begin." If this is your life, it's already your time. Not because you feel confident, not because you have the perfect plan, not because you're guaranteed to win, because you're still here, because you still care, because the discomfort you feel isn't evidence that you're incapable. It's evidence that the story is still unfinished. So the question isn't whether you're late. The question is whether you're willing to stop living like the most important part of your life can be postponed without consequence. And right now, in this ordinary moment, you can do what you've always done: scroll, rationalize, promise yourself soon. Or you can do something else that feels almost too small to matter. Not to fix everything, not to become a new person overnight, just to prove, quietly, that you are still someone who can begin. So when you close this moment, when the phone goes down, when the day moves on, what are you going to practice being? The person who's always about to start, or the person who finally, calmly, refuses to let their life stay hypothetical?